and we're going to break down a very confusing, very confusing series. If you watched the first two games of this series, there were people saying, even we said it on last week's podcast, that this could be the end for the Cavs. Is this the end of LeBron at the Cavs? And now 2 games later, we're tied at 2-2, and this Celtics team looks completely different to the Celtics team that trotted out at TD Gardens just about a week ago.
Yeah, the series, it's amazing how it gets flipped on its head 2 games later. But, yeah, it just looks like LeBron's here now.
Yep, it's LeBron and it's also the rest of his team because in the first 2 at home, obviously we talked about it, they showed a pulse against the against the Raptors. But in the first 2 games at home, they were woeful, as we've come to expect with this Cavs second unit, which is basically everyone outside of LeBron. But then in the last 2 games at home, they've stepped up big time. If we just look at Game 3, which obviously was the blowout win, as every game has nearly been a blowout win either way. Yeah. The Cavs defeated the Celtics by 30 points in Game 3, and the non-LeBron Cavs scored 89 points, which would have beaten the Celtics on its own.
Which we haven't seen that sort of production from them for a while.
If we had have got like 15 points out of the non-LeBron Cavs in
this... Which has happened a lot.
Yeah.
Then would have been a blowout loss.
And LeBron's still playing 37 minutes.
Yeah, so I mean, LeBron is always going to be LeBron. We've got to the point where you just expect him to be great. It's just a question of how great can he be. But when you get the help, so in Game 3, Love had the 13 points, 14 rebounds. Tristan Thompson, who we're going to get to, who's actually been really, really good. George Hill had 13, JR had 11, 3 of 4 from downtown, which he'd been struggling with big time. Yeah. And then Kyle Korver had 14. That was in Game 3.
It's been consistent.
Then in Game 4, Kevin Love had foul trouble. He didn't have the greatest game. But again, Tristan Thompson had 13 points, 12 boards, 2 blocks. George Hill had the 13 points. JR had 9. Kyle Korver had 14. So he's getting that help. And the big difference, at least from the eye test, is that it's allowing LeBron to be more focused on defense, which has been something that, yes, as good as he is, there is that thing where he's kind of having to pick a little bit. He can't score 50 points and take 30 shots and still lock down defensively like he used to. He's human and he's looking a little bit tired.
That was the chink in his armor. It's like he was slowing down on that defensive end, and it was like, how much can he keep going with the players around him who are just shooters?
The one thing I took away from this game was that LeBron and Kevin Love combined for 13 turnovers. LeBron had 7, Kevin Love had 6. But the rest of the team only combined for 5 turnovers. So that's, I think, a big thing when the big thing about this series was that the Celtics' defensive pressure has been amazing and they've been able to stop the Cavs. Well, if they're not forcing
the last 2 games.
Yeah, if they're not forcing those turnovers, then LeBron's just going to be able to have that field day and it's going to be a little bit easier for him to take a step back and then have a bigger impact on the defensive end.
Yep, and I think, as you mentioned, the defense has been the big switch, even for the Cavs. In the last 2 games, the 28th ranked defense has out-defended the first-ranked defense in terms of output it's a very small sample size, but over the last 2 games, the Cavs defense, in Game 3, it was quite good. In Game 4, it was really good to start with, and then it kind of petered off a bit, and we saw the Celtics get back into it a little bit towards the end. But that intensity's been there, and when Kyle Korver is blocking shots,
you're in trouble.
You're in a bit of trouble, aren't you?
And he blocked Jaylen Brown twice and stripped him once, which probably not something you want to add to your career resume. As much as a brilliant shooter as Kyle Korver is, he's not exactly the prototype lockdown wing defender.
Never been known for his defense.
Does that make regular season stats just irrelevant now?
In terms of defensive rating and that kind of... Look, I think the main thing is effort. Look, it just boils down to... In the first 2 games, it was the Celtics who were hustling for every play. We talked about Marcus Smart, and he still did it in the other ones, but the level of effort they're putting into the game. In the last 2 games, it's Kyle Korver who's diving on the floor. It's these guys who are putting in 110% and making the effort plays.
Getting the result.
Yeah, even Tristan Thompson, that one where he went up... He could have got absolutely posterized by Jason Tatum, but he didn't care. He went up and he put the shot off. Tatum missed a dunk. They go down the other end. LeBron scores an and one.
Yep.
That's the kind of 5-point swings that can change. Yeah. And it's that that intensity hasn't been there for much of the series, especially the first two. But in the last two, we've seen a distinct shift. And the Celtics, they look rattled. And is this where, because for me, when I'm watching the last two games, is exactly what I thought the Celtics were going to look like without Kyrie and Hayward. Like, they just look out of sync.
But we thought we'd see it against Philly.
Yeah, we thought we'd see it earlier, but
earlier.
This is... Yeah. But how do you explain the fact that they look so good in game 1 and 2, but then in game 3 and 4, it's just fallen off?
I think it's down to the fact they're not playing at home.
Yeah.
That home crowd seems to drive them to push and play that great defense that we've seen.
So we're blaming that on the Celtics more so than the Cavs.
I think
so
that's
the Celtics
more...
drop off away from when they're playing Cleveland is more Boston, and then they're stronger at home, more so than the Cavs playing at home.
Yeah, it's a tricky one.
Is it almost that the Boston crowd almost has an impact on the Cavs?
Okay, so yeah, we go 50-50.
It could have that impact where it's almost like the crowd in Boston, it gets Boston up, but then it also gets into the head of the Cavs. And
I wouldn't say that because they went to the Raptors. Toronto's crowd's quite loud and they just butchered them. So I wouldn't say that. I think it's more Boston because if you've seen their away record, it's terrible.
So they're 9-0 at home this postseason. They're 1-5 against. So they lost all three at home all three on the road against Milwaukee. They won one against Philly on the road. They lost the other one comfortably, and now they've got blown out twice. And the Cavs are really trying to. We've seen this playoffs, and Houston's doing it with Steph Curry, and even the Warriors are trying to do it with James Harden. But just relentless picking on the 1 weak link. And as good as Terry Rozier is, and as much as he's trying, they're just mercilessly picking on him because of the height disadvantage. Yeah. And they keep getting the switch on him, and it's creating the mismatch because then you've got James driving to the basket. Somebody's got to help, and they're finding options off the secondary passes, which, I don't know, especially in that game 3, Brad Stevens kind of looked a little bit flustered. Like, he went to Yabusele, however you pronounce his name, early in that first quarter of game 3, which is something that we haven't really seen him do. And it was just a decision that, and even throughout the last 2 games, he's looked a little bit stumped, which it's not necessarily his fault.
Well,
but
being challenged.
Yeah, he's being challenged. Yep, it is.
One mountain of a challenge in LeBron's Cavs.
Yeah, and the question now is just, can they... It's obviously now best of 3 series, locked at 2. If they didn't have home court advantage with their performance on the road, you'd probably say it's done, it's over.
Yeah.
But with the 2 home games they have, their chances going forward, do you still take LeBron because he's LeBron, or because they've got the 2 home games and their performance? If we just go off this... and the average margin and everything, the Celtics win in 7 because everybody it's the exact same as the Milwaukee series. Everyone just wins their home game. Home,
yeah.
But is that going to ring true or?
Well, I think if the way I'm seeing it is, if you look at who you think will be the first team to lose at home, I think it would be the Celtics.
Is that just because of LeBron? Or?
I think LeBron's the outlier.
It's also, there's LeBron, but it's also their role players hitting their shots, which is what it's coming down to. In the first 2 games, it just felt like LeBron got absolutely no help. It didn't matter what he did. If you've got guys like George Hill, Kyle Korver, J.R. Smith, they combined for 14, very inefficient 14 in game 1. And then you've got guys like the same kind of guys in game 2 coming out and giving the same performances. If they don't have those guys hitting, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
And then as well, the Tristan Thompson effect. This guy was on a lost and found. Like, the police were searching for him for most of the season just because he was missing. He's not there. He's done nothing. And then he comes out, and I like how Ty Lue stuck with him. They lost, so they went to him in the starting lineup in game 2, and they lost that game. But he stuck with him, and he's been insanely good. Really, really good.
Where's it come from? He like, after the season that he's had, he shouldn't be having this sort of impact in a conference final series.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense, but at the same time, I think once he gets his head into the game, and we know he had dramas off the court and had all that going on with the Kardashians and whatever, but once he gets his head onto the court, he hustles for every rebound. He hustles for every ball. And, I mean, he gets those easy layups, the pick and rolls, the LeBron pick and rolls, whatever. So he is a really good player in the system that he's got around him. And when he wants to, he can play the role that he needs to really well.
And it's not just that he's fitting in the system. He has historically troubled Al Horford, and he's historically troubled the Celtics because they can't stop him getting off the glass. And that they do it so many times. You just watch it. They'll drive inside and just pass it off to him, and he'll finish it around the rim. That has been an issue for Horford when he was at the Hawks, and it's proving to still be an issue on the Celtics. And they've even done it. They've gone with Nance off the bench. And even Nance was a non-feature for pretty much. He played 4 minutes in game 1. He did play 11 in game 2. But he's actually come on. He had 21 in game 3 and just the 10 in game 4. But his impact, just the Energizer Bunny effect, has been huge. And he had that AM1 play in game 4 where he got the rebound, put it back up, got fouled. He had a big block. He's just those hustle plays, which is forcing Brad Stevens to go tall, forcing him to play Aaron Baines more, and taking their rotations out of whack, which has been a big impact in the fact that, like, the Cavs 68 points at the half in game 4 was the most the Celtics have given up for the entire season, equal most.
It's just that production we were waiting for so long off the bench, or even from the starting lineup, because before,
anybody,
they were just crying out for help, and now they're getting it from two guys, as in Clarkson and Nance, who you thought were going to be impact players.
Yeah.
Like, they've both been slipping in and out of the rotation. But when they made that trade, some people were skeptical, and others were like, this is what's going to bolster the Cavs.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it's kind of paying off because they are. Like,
Nance to a bit. Clarkson, I'll argue with you. I think he's still been rubbish. But
Clarkson needs the ball, though.
Yeah, I don't know.
A bit more. Plus, I don't think Tyronn Lue has been coaching that. I think his coaching has been a bit poor because he hasn't put belief in those blokes. He keeps switching them in and out. And I think that's part of the reason why they haven't been playing that well, in my opinion.
We'll see, I don't know.
Because that's the same with Thompson because he hasn't been played all year. And he finally gets a proper run, and look what he's doing for him.
His career's been revived.
I don't think Clarkson needs confidence. He is confidence himself. So, well, I don't know. He's just, Clarkson's one of those ones where he hits and it looks great, or
his hands,
it either splutters all over the place, looks terrible, and you wish you never put him in. The last challenge that Boston's having, as we've talked about the defense, but it's defending LeBron. In game 1 and 2, yes, LeBron was still LeBron. He was still good, but Morris came out before and said, I'm probably the best player outside of Kawhi to defend LeBron, which in game 1 and 2, he actually did a decent job, even though the stat lines would reflect otherwise. He did all right. In game 3 and 4, they have had no answer.
Not so
Even, you just watch him, there's a couple of times where he's just got completely off balance. He's allowed penetration in the lane. He's done all the things you shouldn't be doing with LeBron. And when LeBron's hitting those step-back jumpers that he's knocking down, you can't stop him. Like, that is good defense in terms of that's the lesser of two evils. But if he hits those, you just got to shake your head and say, what can we do? There's not much we can do.
So is LeBron figuring him out?
Well, I think LeBron figures anybody out. Yeah. I don't think, Kawhi's probably the only...
So is it just like that adjustment period, game 1 and 2?
Yeah, they've certainly adjusted. I still think that this series is not over yet because we have recency bias when it comes to playoffs, and because the last 2 games have been so dominant, we tend to go, the Cavs will be right. But we also forget they were awful in the first 2 games, and the Celtics looked brilliant. So it could shift either way, and we're just going to have to wait and see. The one positive for the Celtics is, in that game 4, obviously we know game 3 was a complete blowout, 30 points. In that game 4, yes, they lost in the end. 9 points was flattering, but they actually won every quarter outside the first quarter. It was just their offense in the first quarter was awful, and they gave up 34 points. They shot 1 of 7 from 3. They shot 27% from the field, and they never recovered. The 3 quarters, second, third, and fourth quarter, if you just played that in isolation, they would have won that game. So there is some solace in the fact that, yes, it looks like they lost and it's a bad loss, but they really just played one awful quarter. And their defense did get better towards the end. One thing they have to work on is getting back to that game 1 and 2 where they were so crafty, getting Rozier off of LeBron, getting him off of the switch. So switching instead of just, going, all right, fine, we're going to let Rozier take take their best player because it's just a mismatch that they're exploiting.
Which you'd have faith in because of Brad Stevens, right?
And they've shown they can do it. They did it at home.
Personnel issue.
Yeah. They just have to do it on the road.
You can trust Brad Stevens.
If there's any coach you can trust, it's going to be Brad Stevens. If we're going predictions, obviously by the time we record the next one, this one will be over. As we said, it's the best of 3 series now. I got no idea. Just because this series is so confusing because it's just like if you go off the last two, you'd say 100% the Cavs. Celtics are no chance. But then you go off the first two and you say the Cavs are no chance. The Celtics destroyed them. I'm going Cavs in 7. Celtics win 5. Cavs win 6 and LeBron wins 7.
Wow.
Game 5 is crucial.
Yeah, if Boston lose Game 5,
Celtics have to win this next game. I'm going LeBron all the way. It'll probably be in 7.
Yeah, I'm going to have to think the same. I know you said about the recency effect.
You just can't trust anybody outside LeBron when it comes to Game 7.
I don't think there's any blame game towards the loser, though, even if it goes down to 6 or 7 games.
I think we've said it multiple times on this podcast.
Betting against LeBron is just stupid.
Yeah, and we said it last week that it was over, that this is the end of LeBron at Cleveland.
That went well, didn't it?
Yeah.
I think you literally just never go against LeBron. And we did it, and we
look stupid.
We look stupid because of it. And I think from here on out, I'm never going against LeBron. I can't do it because I've done it too many times and got burnt that many times that I just can't tip against him anymore.
Yeah.
Unless you look at the Celtics, they don't have a 5-star player that can take them in Game 7.
And that is the thing. LeBron. That is the biggest, as we were talking about, the Celtics could make the conference finals without their 2 best players. This team is insane. This is really exposing the underlying point. This team is brilliant, but you need a superstar, and they need Kyrie Irving, and they need Gordon Hayward. It'd be a completely different ball game.
It's weird, though, because you think if the games were closer, the Cavs would win them just based on having LeBron in those clutch moments, because he's on fire.
He is, but in saying that, the Celtics are really good in the clutch as well. We saw that against Philly and during the regular season. So it would be interesting. But, yeah, Game 5 is obviously tomorrow.